Kentucky basketball had an extremely chaotic weekend, but it wasn't all negative. The Wildcats made a lot of progress with one of the best recruits in next year's class.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing five-star Caleb Wilson, who apparently had a very, very good visit with the Cats over the weekend. What do we know about Wilson, and what do we know about some things that were said on an Instagram post that he made this weekend? Also on today's episode, we've got to talk about it. Kentucky versus Georgia, a nail-biter, a heartbreaker, whatever you want to call it. It was just really, really disappointing to see the Cats go out the way that they did in a game that they, frankly, I think should have won. We're going to break down what we saw from that contest as well. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. You can go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code Locked On College Football to receive 20% off your order. That is promo code Locked On CFB. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky basketball apparently had a phenomenal official visit with Caleb Wilson this past weekend. We've got some different things online that are being said about Wilson and his recruitment. Some rumors, some things are accurate, some things are not, but this is confirmed for certain. Wilson and his family had a very, very good time over the course of the weekend alongside head coach Mark Pope. There were a lot of things discussed, some of which are hidden behind paywalls that I won't talk about here today, but I will tell you the conversations went very, very well, and I think that that is apparent if you just go on Twitter for a few minutes and you see what other people have to say about this weekend. This is, I think, just another opportunity for Coach Mark Pope to prove that he has the ability to recruit very well at this program. There was the massive question, and we said this on the most recent episode of the show, there was a massive question with Mark Pope as to whether or not he would be able to actually go out and get the talent that Kentucky needed in order to succeed. Yes, there is going to be, I think, a major upgrade in terms of X's and O's and in terms of philosophy actually on the court, but as far as recruiting goes, as far as talent goes, can Kentucky actually bring in the guys to make this thing work? And I think the answer so far to that question has been absolutely. Now, you were able to pick up five-star Jasper Johnson, who is in-state. Great. You were able to pick up Malachi Marino, the number one center in the 2025 class. Great. Can you go out and get somebody like Caleb Wilson, who is not from Kentucky? Can you get him outside of the state while also being one of the best players in next year's class? And there's been some comments already on my YouTube channel about some concerns about whether or not Mark Pope is doing the same thing that Coach Cal did, and he's just simply going out and grabbing talent from all these different places, and he's just kind of pushing it together and saying, hey, if I have the opportunity to get all these five-star one-and-dones, I'm still going to go and get them. We don't want to see that, obviously. I don't think that's what's happening here, and even if it is, I think that it's something that we need to at least pay attention to and not burn down the building immediately over because, again, like I mentioned, this is a different coaching philosophy. This is a different X's and O's scheme. A lot of different things are going to be implemented when it actually comes to coaching these kids and getting them ready to play on the court. Caleb Wilson, five-star prospect, 6'9", 195-pound power forward out of Atlanta, Georgia. According to On3's industry ranking, he is the number 4 overall player in the 2025 class. He is the number 2 power forward and the number 1 player in the state of Georgia. According to the recruiting prediction machine, Auburn has the best chance to land him right now at 22%, Alabama at 14.6%, Kentucky at 12.5%, and then North Carolina at 10.4%. 24/7 Sports has him the lowest rated out of the four major recruiting websites on 24/7, ESPN, and Rivals. They have him as the 8th overall player, number 4 power forward, and of course the number 1 player in the state of Georgia. He was selected as a member of USA Basketball Junior National 18 team in 2024. His favorite NBA player is Nikola Jokic, and he tries to model his game after him. He says, I play a combo forward role. I can shoot the three, I can shoot off the dribble, I'm a very good passer, and defensively I can play perimeter and interior defense. He's been my favorite player since his rookie year. I love his passing and his playmaking. A lot of people say that that is what is best about me. I watch how he comes down the floor, surveys the court, and sets his teammates up. I try to put that into my game. And ladies and gentlemen, that's kind of all you need to know here about Caleb Wilson and his ability to play at that power forward role. He is somebody that I think has defensive upside. He's got a defensive potential for sure, but whenever you watch him, it really is about what he does on the offensive end of the floor. You see the ability to knock down the outside shot. You see the ability to handle the ball comfortably. You see the ability to pass to the rock to his teammates. Now, is it as creative as some of the things that Nikola Jokic does? Obviously, that's what comes to mind first whenever you think of Jokic and passing. No, but again, this is a high schooler compared to a 2-time MVP in the NBA, so obviously he's got some things to work out and some things to develop, but it is clear, very, very clear, that everything that Caleb Wilson wants to do translates very well to the NBA, and I don't necessarily think it's going to dramatically alter his development if he chooses to go to one blue blood program over another, if he chooses to go to an Auburn or a North Carolina or an Alabama. But Kentucky can offer him something special with their personnel grouping and with their coaching. Kentucky's offense is special. There are only just a couple of teams like the Wildcats out there in college basketball. Pair it with their resources and pair it with the talent that they could surround Caleb Wilson with, whether that be through recruiting or through the transfer portal, and you've got yourself a really, really solid place to be if you're a guy like Wilson. Now, obviously, again, like I have said over and over and over, does Kentucky want to push all of their chips in towards these big-time 5-star recruits and just make another one-and-done team? That's something we have said over and over and over. Is that what Kentucky needs to do? And the answer on this show has so far been no. But if you have Johnson, Marino, Wilson, and then possibly another player who I want to talk about here in just a second, I mean, those four combined with the core coming back next season, I mean, you start to develop some really solid chemistry. You start to develop some really solid roster, I guess, developments, rotate, whatever you want to call it. They are building something here. And I don't necessarily think it has to be, you have to be limited to 1 or 2 freshmen every single season to kind of realize the potential that I think Mark Pope could reach. So that is 5-star Caleb Wilson. Going to continue to talk about him in just a second, and a player that could potentially come and join him that the Wildcats are going after. Before we get into that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at 5-Hour Energy. You can grab a 5-Hour Energy shot to stay alert to watch all your favorite games, or if you stayed up late to see that intense overtime game, you can take a 5-Hour Energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. It is a really, really solid resource with 0 sugar, a convenient portable size, and it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy shot has flavors galore. You can head over to the website to try flavors like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and there is a flavor for every single person. You can try them all. And then on the site, you even have the option to pick up your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You can build your own mix and match flavors. You should try them all, choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th and on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Again, that is 5hourenergy.com, promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed as of late, whether that be on podcast or on YouTube. Thank you to everybody who leaves comments and asks questions about the show. If you have any questions that you want answered in the comments below, you can absolutely drop them, or you can hit me on Twitter at LockedOnUK. All right, let's continue along here. Caleb Wilson having a phenomenal visit with Kentucky basketball. Of course, there is some more interesting news that kind of surrounds Caleb Wilson here. So he posted to social media. He posted to social media about his visit with the Wildcats, which again, but based off pictures, looked like it went awesome. And then Kentucky's players found the post on social media, and all of them flocked to tell this kid that he needed to come and pick Kentucky. Andrew Carr, Kobe Brea, Lamont Butler, all of these different players. You've also got guys like Jasper Johnson. You've got guys like Malachi, all coming to comment on his Instagram post saying, "Come play at Kentucky. We want you to come play at Kentucky." And then there was four-star guard, Acaden Lewis, somebody that Kentucky has continued to make a major priority here. The number 34 overall player, number 5 point guard, number 1 player in DC, 6'2", 185. North Carolina, UConn, Duke are the other 3 teams in his top 4 that he announced just a few days ago. So it's Kentucky, Duke, UConn, and UNC. A very, 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 very high-profile Final Four for Acaden Lewis. Just shows you how good of a player he is as a lefty, as a point guard. Would be super fun with Jasper Johnson. But Lewis commented on the Instagram post, and he said, "I want to play with this guy." He wants to play with Caleb Wilson. He wants somebody at that stretch 4 spot that can be explosive, that can pass, that can shoot, somebody that is offensively versatile and open when it comes to running with a point guard, running a 2-man game, running with a 5-man set, just doing all sorts of crazy, uncharacteristic things for their position. I think that Kentucky would be just awesome to watch. They would be super explosive with guys like Johnson, with guys like Lewis, Malachi Marino being an anchor down low. I mean, you're really starting to put all of these different things together, right? If you are able to get Lewis and you are able to get Wilson together, that is 2 5-stars, 2 4-stars. You have Otega Owe, and you have a number of freshmen this year that would be sophomores coming back. You'd have Brandon Garrison. You'd have a pretty good team. Heading into next season, you would have a team that would be projected to be really, really good, at least in terms of regular season success. Now, how Kentucky does in the postseason is another question, but, I mean, you have 2 solid point guards. You've got Travis Perry coming back as well. You would have some questions at small forward and then maybe another need at power forward, but you still have shooting. You've got scoring. You've got Trent Noah. You've got Colin Chandler. You would have Johnson that could slide down to the 2. You would have guys like Malachi Marino and Brandon Garrison to anchor things down low. Don't really know if you'd have to do a ton there at that center spot. You would feel comfortable with a lot of your 1s and 2s. And Otega, I think at that point, would be one of the leaders of this squad next season, which I really am looking forward to how he plays this year. They just recently, Kentucky did, put out a social media video just of him mic'd up. It was like 3.5 minutes. Love the way he interacts with his teammates. Love the way this team interacts with each other. Butler, Brea, Owe, all of these guys, super energetic, super fun. Love just the videos that Kentucky continues to put out. I really like this team, and I hope that they succeed. But anyway, back to Acaden Lewis. This is what he had to say about Kentucky when talking about his top 4 schools. This is from an article from 2 days ago from Joe Tipton. This came out on Saturday. He said, "A lot of people saw the home visit they just did with me and everything. Their staff is doing an amazing job recruiting. They've been super active in being in film sessions with me, and I like the thought of playing with Jasper Johnson, to be honest. 2 lefties is pretty lethal, so that's pretty cool. I've seen Coach Pope at BYU a bunch of times just watching. not knowing he would get the Kentucky job or I would even get the opportunity to be going to Kentucky. But he's done a really good job with the program so far. I think they're going to have a good year this year. And I think next year, the way he's recruiting, it could be a breakout year if he gets all the guys he's going after. Lewis and I seem to share very similar thoughts. He said just blessed to play in a system like that. Coach Hart played in the NBA and he was bad, like he could hoop. That's what Lewis had to say. So it would be cool to learn from a guy that, especially since he's been around the league with G League Ignite, so a lot of experience and a great staff and a place I could see myself playing. Of course, he also talks highly of North Carolina, of UConn, of Duke, about how well all of them have done recruiting him. And it's not just the head coaches, it's various staffers. So Lewis seems to be taking this thing really, really seriously diving in depth with a lot of relationships with a lot of different staffers. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you are Acaden, look at what Kentucky is building. If they have a good year this year, if they start to show out early in the non-con, proving what they can do on offense, I think it's going to get a lot of kids' attention, a lot of high-profile recruits' attention that may already be looking at Kentucky, maybe not, and they may see it and say, hey, that's something that I want to go play for. They're putting up points against Duke. They're putting up points against Ohio State. They're going on the road to Clemson, and they're stunning the Tigers in the ACC SEC Challenge. They're looking fun. They're looking like they have a solid program, a core to build around for next season. Yeah, that's something I want to go play with. So I think that Kentucky is putting themselves in a really, really good position right now off the court. They just need to go find some success on the court. This past weekend, in the realm of football, Kentucky had the opportunity to find some success on the field, and yet they did not. What happened in Kentucky versus Georgia? Some very disappointing stuff. Let's wrap up the show talking about it here in just a moment. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and we have something a little different here for you because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. You can visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, wrapping up the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Oh, we've got a really interesting one here to break down to wrap up the show. Kentucky, 12. #1, Georgia, 13. That was the final score from this past weekend. Wildcats nailed a field goal in every single quarter. Georgia with the go-ahead touchdown late in the fourth. Or excuse me, early in the fourth, I should say. Kentucky should have won this game. And at the end of the day, I blame this on coaching. There was a lack of execution at times from various players. We won't get into it. Let's keep on the overarching theme. We won't dive into the nitty-gritty. We will get into some plays at the very end, but we won't dive into everything that happened in this game. The coaches took away the ability for Kentucky to win the game at the very end. And I know what some of those coaches may have to say about this. We put them in position to win in the first place. Sure, yes, awesome. You did not finish the job. The whole point of this operation is to go out there and to beat the opponent. You got so close, and then when you had the opportunity to make it happen, you shied away from it and you gave up. And do not tell me that punting on 4th and 8 at midfield with 3 minutes left in the game is not giving up. I refuse to hear that conversation from anyone, the head coach, an assistant who wants to reach out. It does not matter. You gave up and lost this game. It wasn't on the kids. It wasn't on Vandegrift. It wasn't on Sumo Karngbae. It wasn't on Brown. It wasn't on anybody on the defense. You lost this game by giving the ball up with 3 minutes to play. And I understand what Stoops had to say during his press conference. He said that they wanted to get a little closer. He knew that at one point, hey, we're going to go for it. He said, I don't take offense to the criticism of not going for it or whatever. Again, I told the coaches on the headset on first down, I had every intention of going for it. Wish we would have gained some yards and had a manageable third down, manageable fourth down. But you've got to realize in that same zone on the plus 48, we had 2 sack fumbles, 1 sack, and the next one went back from plus territory. Think about it if we get 3 there. And then he said, think about if Coach Stoops goes conservative and we just run it 3 plays in a row and kick the field goal there, right? I mean, again, if you're going to report this, report the whole D thing. If we would have just went, how many people are saying, hey, Coach Stoops, you're dumb. We had the ball on the plus 47. Why didn't you just pound it 3 more times? We're moving the ball against a good defense. What if we got those 3 instead of gotten sacked fumbles and went all the way back to the 22 on the other side? Think about that swing. Nobody talks about that, do they? When I had the ball 3 times around the same zone and went negative on second down and negative on second down. D near had a fumble. Third down, D near had a fumble. We got to that point by playing field position and playing defense. We had a chance to win the game just the way we played it. We came up a play or 2 short. I stand by that. You can stand by that, but you took a fat L, dog. You took a fat L when you could have gone for it and you could have won the game. So here's the thing. He said, we got to that point by playing field position and defense. You're right. You asked your defense to play the greatest game in program history against one of the best teams in college football, hands down the best program in college football at the moment. You asked them for 4 straight quarters to play the most perfect, sound defense, and they got it to you for about 3.5 quarters until they broke, until they finally started to break in that 4th quarter. Georgia finally figured it out, started to run the ball a little bit more effectively. They found some passes. They got into that zone downfield. They got some completions, and they scored a touchdown at the end of the game to win it. You got to that point with your game plan. At what point do you decide, hey, maybe this isn't going to work anymore? Anyone watching that game saw the signs. They saw the signs of a cracking defense. They saw the signs of an offense that, yes, had some inconsistencies, but was still picking up field goals every stinking quarter. You just had to get one more from your special teams unit that in past seasons, by the way, would have failed you. They would not have made those field goals. They would not have hit a program record-setting 55-yard field goal or whatever it was. They would not have done that. 2 years ago, this program would have flopped. They would have lost this game by 17 plus. They would have missed field goals, and Georgia would have taken over, and they would have executed it against an emotionally depraved team. They would have won this game by more. But no, you had the chance to go down on the field and to kick this field goal and win the game 15-13, and yet you decided you decided to play conservatively. And I'm not going to sit here and dog him and say cowardly or it's weak or it's pathetic. It's extremely disappointing. Yes, it's a conservative game plan that almost won. Yes, but you have to step away from that at some point if the goal is to win. You can't expect your defense to be perfect forever, and you saw it happening in the 4th quarter. I understand what he's saying about we almost had turnovers all these different times. Yes. You almost had turnovers. You also almost had a chance to win the game, and you almost had a chance to get the ball back with time remaining, but you didn't. And his whole thing, sitting here in these quotes saying, well, nobody really talks about all the things that could have happened poorly. That's a loser's mentality. That is, you're not thinking about things in a positive light, and you're not thinking about how I can win the game. You're thinking about how I could possibly lose the game. And then you're sitting here telling me, oh, we'd made the best decision here, I think, because I was scared of losing the game. SB Nation did a really good video about this about 3 or 4 years ago. I believe it's called Searching for the Saddest Punt in NFL History. And there are 4 or 5 different games that went exactly like this. Exactly like this. Where the underdog had a shot and they punted with a little bit of time remaining, and they either never got the ball back or they got the ball back with very little time. And every statistic, every little piece of data would tell you that this is objectively the wrong decision. It's the wrong decision. Guess what Georgia ended up doing? They ended up punting from close to midfield anyway. And then you had 9 seconds to figure things out. It's so frustrating to me. So you have to ask the question, how much time needed to be left on the clock for you to go for it? 2 minutes? A minute and a half? 1 minute? I don't understand. I don't understand it. This is on the coaches. I am so disappointed. Kentucky could have won this game, and yet this is going to end up probably being a season where we look back and saying, yep, this is a lot of confusing football. It's a lot of confusing football. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.